A few weeks ago, my husband and I were on our way to have dinner with some dear friends who happen to live just minutes from one of the most beautiful libraries in East Tennessee. Naturally, every time we visit, I have to go by. As soon as we pulled into the parking lot, I made a beeline for my reserved stack like a long-lost reunion, and then wandered into the children's section to do what every just browsing book lover does. Methodically touch and admire books I didn't plan on checking out. That's when I saw it, The Jungle Book. Not the Disney version my brain immediately leapt to, but a richly illustrated edition that seemed to glow from the shelf. The cover illustrations were so soft and richly detailed that I stood there, holding it like a treasure someone accidentally left behind. Immediately, I couldn't wait to crack it open with my students. Even before reading the first word, the art whispered, "There's more to this story than you remember." And oh, there really is. A quick note about this edition. The specific book I picked up keeps Rudyard Kipling's original text intact, unfiltered, unabridged, and unaltered. That's the story as it was written, full of adventure, danger, and a timeless old world rhythm that continues to captivate readers. The illustrations, however, are entirely new. Nicola Bayley, the artist behind this edition, didn't change a single word of the text. She simply illuminated the story. Bayley created these images after spending some time in India, absorbing the colors, wildlife, textures, and light of the landscape. Her vision isn't cartoonish. It's a real, breathing jungle. Leaves shimmer, shadows stretch, and every animal seems alert, alive, and aware. You can almost feel the heat, hear the rustle of the grass, and sense the stillness before something wild moves. Her watercolor style illustrations are lush, quiet, and incredibly detailed. They invite readers to slow down, linger over a page, and immerse themselves in a jungle in a way that words alone simply can't achieve. And a note on the illustration style. Because Mowgli grows up in the wild, without closets, tailors, or clothing stores nearby, he's sometimes depicted very naturally. Bayley portrays him as a child truly raised by wolves, which means there are moments where you will see bare bottoms or minimal clothing. It isn't provocative or graphic. It's simply faithful to Kipling's story. If you're reading with students or children, there may be a few giggles, but it's all presented tastefully as part of Mowgli's natural world. Okay, story time. Mowgli is raised by wolves in the jungle, taught the law of the jungle by Baloo, and watched over by Bagheera. But right from the first pages, I noticed how different their personalities were from the Disney version I remembered. Baloo, far from the carefree singing bear of my childhood, is the serious teacher, steadfast, protective, and completely devoted to Mowgli's growth. Bagheera, on the other hand, leans into adventure, nudging Mowgli to explore and take risks. That little flip in personality gave the story a depth I hadn't expected, and it quickly became something we talked about as a class. What does it mean to guide someone, to teach courage, and to care for someone without coddling them? As Mowgli makes his way through the jungle, he faces danger, makes choices, and forms friendships under the watchful eyes of his mentors. And then, just when we thought we knew the story, Kipling surprises us. After leaving the jungle, Mowgli moves into the human village. This second arc, completely absent from the Disney movie, added a whole new layer to the story, showing that belonging isn't always simple, whether you live with wolves or humans. The tone of the book stays adventurous, but there's a reflective, almost myth-like rhythm that makes you pause and notice each choice and consequence instead of rushing to laughs or big action. My students were completely hooked. They noticed right away that this wasn't Disney. Fewer jokes, more tension, and a pacing that allowed them to really sink into the story. A few of the older formal words needed gentle explanation, but that just opened the door to conversation about language, character motivation, and how stories are built. And the illustrations, they couldn't stop looking. They pointed out details in the leaves, the animals, the textures of the forest, and kept asking if the jungle felt real. It really did feel alive, in a way that made the words and the art work together perfectly. Another big surprise was that Kaa isn't a traditional villain. He's helpful in his own strange, ambiguous way, leaving us to wonder if he can be trusted. Shere Khan's death is quiet and efficient, far from the big dramatic climax we expected, which at first made me blink. Wait, that's it? But then I realized it fits the story's reflective, thoughtful tone. Reading this with kids really highlighted how differently Disney and Kipling tell the same story. Disney leans into humor, music, and spectacle, while Kipling leans into loyalty, courage, mentorship, and consequences. And that difference opens up the best conversations about storytelling, why one version chooses to emphasize one thing over another, and what that choice does to the way we experience the story. Themes I'm still chewing on. The jungle, in the Jungle Book, is more than a setting. It's a fully realized world with its own rules, rhythms, and sense of order. The law of the jungle is detailed and deliberate, teaching responsibility, respect, and the importance of each creature's role in the community. There's a subtle reverence for life here, a harmony that reminded me a bit of Native American teachings about living in balance with nature. It's not just survival. Mowgli learns to move thoughtfully, notice the world around him, and understand how freedom comes with responsibility. At the same time, one of the most compelling aspects of the story is Mowgli's sense of not fully belonging anywhere. He is loved and guided by Baloo and Bagheera, but he doesn't fully fit in with the wolves, or later with humans. This feeling of being in between worlds quietly resonates for kids who live between cultures, move frequently, or grew up in families that straddle different traditions. For parents of older readers, this dual layer, the challenge of finding where you belong while navigating multiple worlds, offers a beautiful opportunity for reflection. Mowgli's journey can echo the experiences of missionary kids, immigrant families, third culture children, and even people of faith who live in the world but don't completely feel like they belong. Although I'm not sure anyone fully feels as though they belong. Kipling doesn't spell it out. It's woven naturally into the story, giving it a timeless depth that lingers long after the last page. While the story has a happy ending, Mowgli returns to his wolf family without all of the villains standing in his way, the tension, much like in our own lives, is never fully resolved. And I loved that. It felt honest, real, and quietly profound. A reminder that even stories with resolution can reflect the ongoing, complicated nature of belonging and growth. By the time we closed the book, the kids were itching to watch the movie. Not because it's better, but because reading the original had opened their eyes to details and surprises they'd never noticed before. Bayley's lush illustrations made the jungle feel alive, and watching the familiar scenes afterward became a new kind of adventure. Noticing the differences, comparing choices, and talking about the story in fresh ways. There's something special about reading the original first, letting the story settle, and then watching the movie with fresh eyes. It turns story time into a quiet little adventure for everyone. And if you haven't tried it yet, I highly recommend it. That's all for now. Take care, stay curious, and I'll see you next time.